Ladies and gents, Thought Forums here. Today we are looking at what I think is one of the best bargains in the Rompler world if you're going after that 90s Rompler sound, and that is the Korg TR-Rack here. Now the TR-Rack is essentially the Korg Trinity in rack form. I think it came out in about 98, the original Trinity came out in 1995, and it was the Korg Access engine, and essentially very similar to the Korg M1, the synths before it, except just better. There was this like added fidelity to the Trinity that the M1, the O1RW just didn't have. And so this was a killer synth. A lot of folks use this. I think Buckham did, Goldie, just such a good sounding synth here. And then after this came the Korg Triton rack, which you guys know I'm a huge fanboy. Now, out of the gate, I'll say, the Trinity here, I think sonically, sounds better than the Triton rack. It's almost this mixture between the M1 sound and the Triton sound, with the M1 being a little more dark and airy, the Triton being a lot more crisp and airy, but just maybe a little more wispy. It kind of sits in the middle there, where it has that super old school Rompler charm, but kind of nodding towards what the future was going to sound like. So I think this is a killer synth. I want to walk you guys through it here today, why it's killer, why it's a good deal, as well as some of the downsides to it. Now the biggest downside with the TR-Rack here is that you basically can't edit it from the front panel. And so the way it's set up, very similar to the Triton rack, almost the same architecture. You have your program mode, your combi mode. So program mode being 2 oscillators that you can stack up. Combi mode being a collection of programs you can stack up for just like massive sounds. Now, if I go into program mode here and I want to edit it, you'll see I have a very limited set of parameters. Look at this freaking mic close to me that I can edit here. So I have the octave for each oscillator that I can control. I have the amp level, the filter frequency, the filter envelope amount, resonance, attack time, decay, so the amp envelope. You can't actually access every parameter within here. So if you wanted to change the oscillators, you literally can't do it on here, right? And so that is a massive downside, and you could almost see this as like some type of just like literally a playback synth, which it kind of is with some basic editing. However, if you come to your computer here, there are editors that you can use to access all the parameters within here. So I'm using Midiquest 13 here, and you'll see on the screen, this gives me access to every single parameter in the Trinity, including the oscillators, everything. So if you want to get the most out of something like the TR-Rack, get something like Midiquest. I'd just recommend Midiquest. A lot of people talk trash about it. It's wonky, it has its faults, but ultimately it works, and it lets you get more out of your Triton rack here. By the way, this thing has an audition button on the front. Man, I wish more rack synths had an audition button. Triton rack does, but it's just a lifesaver. So this thing's awesome. As I said, I think it sounds really good, arguably better than the Triton, whereas the Triton still sounds great. Triton just has a bit more utility within it, in my opinion. So first thing I want to do is actually just come in the DAW and compare some sounds between the TR-Rack or the Trinity and the Triton. And so we'll bang through a few here, starting with vocal pads. I gotta say, that is a mighty nice pad on the Triton there. Definitely a little more full and open, whereas the Trinity does sound a little more muffled in comparison. Let's check out a few more. So, like, what I'm actually noticing here is the Triton definitely does sound a lot more open, airy, just better quality, a lot more full. And that could come down to the effects engine in the Triton, where you just get more effect slots within there, as well as there's some EQ built in. So something may be going on in the patch itself. As far as I'm concerned, the sample rate of the PCM samples that power the oscillators, I think they're the same between the two. But the TR-Rack just has that little more, dare I say, vintage sound, like retro, almost more like an M1, if you will. Kind of that just muffleness to it, which candidly, I really like. Now, in terms of effects, if we go into Midiquest here, and let's actually come into Program Bank A, let's grab this New Age pad again. So, as we talked about, similar architecture to the Triton, where in a program you can use a single oscillator or two, or a drum program. You have that concept of a high and low oscillator within a patch, so depending on the velocity that you play with, a different sound could play. So in theory, you could have actually 4 different oscillators within a single patch. Now, somewhere that's a little different is just the amount of insert effects, where the Triton, I want to say it's like 5 insert effects plus 2 master effects. The Trinity, or TR-Rack here, has a little less. So you have your master effects here, and then a handful of insert effects. Now, effect-wise, I think the Trinity is just killer when it comes to effects. I've done videos on the effects in the Triton, some of the best effects in the game built into a synthesizer. And the Trinity has a lot of similar effects within here as well. And so there was this one specific effect that I did a video on, which I'll link up on the screen here, the random filter. The Trinity also has it, and it just sounds so good within here. So you get those same just amazing effects within here. Now, in terms of editing, right, Midi Quest isn't the best looking interface, but again, it gets the job done. And so I think, like, let me bring this over here, may need it, the microphone. I think the TR-Rack is just one of the best values. If you're making 90s style music, especially ambient, and you want something a little more like muffly, early 90s sounding, I'd even call it mid-90s because that's technically what it is. This is such a good deal. You can still find these for $300 to $400 online, depending on the condition. Some go a little higher, but you get this. You get something like Midi Quest with it, and man, you're just off to the races there. Now, something cool that Midi Quest can actually do is it can generate patches. So if you're not like a crazy good synth programmer, what you can do is grab a few patches that you like. So for example, New Age chorals here. Sometimes it just screws up, and that's pretty frustrating. So you kind of, I don't know what's going on, whatever. So, okay, anyways, all right, we fixed it now. We're back. Pitfalls are working with old gear. So anyways, like I was saying, if you like a pad sound in here, you're not a synth programmer, you want to program something from scratch, Midi Quest, when it works, lets you combine sounds and will actually generate new sounds for you. So for example, New Age pads. I like that. Let's say I like Terra pads too. So I can select both of these, and then at the top you'll see I have options here to mix, blend, and generate new sounds. So what I may do here, for example, is select mix, and then it will generate new patches, and you can proportionately drag this slider here so the new generated patches will have more qualities from one program versus the other, or a perfect mix. So I could do that, click OK, and you'll see we get a new bank here. Now, something you can do here, like in the Triton, is you can filter by different categories. So I have, in program mode, strings, vocal airy, brass, woodwinds, guitar, bass, plucked leads, synth leads, motion synths, which I think the Trinity and Triton line are known for. And of course, Midi Quest is doing something. And then the combis in here, just like the Triton. I mean, the combis are so good. There's a patch in here. And this one's actually interesting. The Trinity has a lot of really good special effects sounds within here too. Just wacky stuff that makes for good ear candy. And if we go lower, incredible, man. Great sounds in here. I mean, if you think to 90s atmospheric drum and bass, these type of effects, that's what it is, man. Just, God, such a good synth here. And honestly, pairs great with the Triton here if you get both. So we can come into our DAW and we can start to do things like, maybe we want the sound effect there. And then on the Triton, we want a nice chord. So we could come in. Could stack these both up here, play them at the same time. Anyways, folks, that was my bit of a rambling about the TR-Rack here. Little unstructured, but such a good synth, and I know a lot of folks are interested in hardware. So just wanted to show off some of my favorites here. That's how you build stuff up, man. You get the gear they used. If you want that sound, go for the gear they used. That's the way to do it. And you start stacking these things up here, and then you get that light bulb moment with, you know, how they compose these things and how they got the sound that they did. So hope you guys found this video fun, interesting. If you want to see more hardware videos, you know, some of these other things, the JP8080, O1RW, let me know in the comments down below. Until the next video, have a good one.